Hey everyone, in this video we are going to be creating a planogram wall in Adobe Photoshop. So to start, you'll need to download the file that I have placed inside the assignment in Canvas. So I have already gone ahead and done that. So I'm going to go ahead and open that file. In this file there is a template for us to draw these different shapes to create a 5-column planogram wall. So I have just an image here that has the dimensions of all the different shapes we're going to draw. I also have a layer here with a human. This is kind of for scale. So in the final project, you will bring in different products and scale them down to fill your planogram wall. And you want to use this human layer to kind of make sure you're sizing your clothing appropriately so that it is all proportional to each other. Okay. So we have here on the first column, this will be a graphic, and then we have 6 shelves. In the second column, we have a shelf, and then right below that is a rod, and then another rod. In the center column, we have a bigger graphic and a rod below that. And then column 4 is just column 2 repeated, and column 5 is column 1 repeated. So this is a symmetric wall. So before I start drawing these different shapes, I want to find materials for my shelving. For the rod, we will use a gradient, but you could also find a metal material of some kind or wood material. So we will also need a background wall material, and we will need a flooring material. So we'll show just a little bit of the floor. We're going to include the floor just in case you want to merchandise some items on the floor when you make your full planogram for your final. First, I'm going to go and open the files of my materials. I found these files on Adobe stock. They are all JPEG files. They could be a PNG file or a TIFF file, but they are all flat images. They're not Illustrator files. They're not Photoshop files. They're not 3D files, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go to File and Open. First, I'll open the wooden texture that I have. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to add this to my pattern swatches. My pattern swatches are showing up over here on the right with my color swatches, gradient swatches. This will allow us to fill any kind of shape with this pattern or material instead of using a clipping mask to place it inside. So to define a pattern in Adobe Photoshop, you're going to go to the Edit menu, and then you're going to go down to Define Pattern with this image open. And here we have it giving us an option to give it a name, and we can call this wood shelving. And I'll click OK. And then I can go ahead and close that. It will stay in my pattern files. I'm going to go ahead and open my next texture. I'm not sure if I'll use this one today, but I have this pegboard texture in case I want to use one of the spaces for the graphics as a pegboard. So I'm going to go and add this in. I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to go to Define Pattern, and I'll call this pegboard. All right, my wall will be its own image, and my flooring will also just be an image. I'm not going to have those be pattern fills, but you could if you wanted to try that. So I also have a metal I'm going to import just in case I want to kind of use that for my rod, or if I want to add some texture to some of the other shells. Go to File, Open, and I'll find this metal texture, and I'll define the pattern, Edit, Define Pattern, and I'll call this textured metal. Okay, so I have my patterns placed in here, and now I can go back to my template and I can start actually drawing these shapes and creating this wall. So I'm going to draw all the shapes in each column, and then I'll go ahead at the end and add the background image and the flooring image. So I have all the dimensions here, and I've placed guides for you just so you can make sure that everything is symmetrical. All of the columns are the exact same width. The space between the columns are the exact same width. So I took some of the thinking out of it for y'all. You are more than welcome to change up your layout for your final if you would like, but you're only required to fill this template. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to go down to the rectangle tool. The shortcut in Photoshop is U. Okay, so I want to create a rectangle that is 615 pixels by 300 pixels. Let me get a different color so that it's not that teal color. Okay, so with the fill, and I'll go ahead and select the black stroke at one pixel because I'm going to add that regardless. I'm going to go ahead and input these measurements. So 615, that's the width, and 300 pixels, that is the height, and I'll click OK. And so now I have a rectangle, and if I go to the layers panel, I could call this image 1 because I'm going to put an image here in the end. So I'm going to go ahead and place that, and I'm going to have it snap to that top left corner. All right, next I'm going to go ahead and draw the first shelf. So I'll click, and I see that this is 615 wide, and this is 30 pixels in height, and I'll click OK. Now I want this fill to be a pattern. So here I see on my right side the pattern, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this wood pattern while this rectangle is selected, and let me hide the grid so we can see a little better, a little more clearly. All right, hiding the grid now, we can see more clearly, and we can see that there is a wood texture inside. Now we can go ahead and move this over to the location for our first shelf. If you think the texture is kind of too zoomed in, I do think that about this. You can scale the pattern. So if you go to the pattern menu here and you click on the fill, you'll get this extra properties panel, and here it says scale. So I'm going to go ahead and scale the pattern down, and you can kind of start seeing more of the texture. And I see that I accidentally have the pegboard. So let me go ahead and select the regular wooden texture. I'll click on that fill and scale accordingly. I can also rotate it if the grain is off a little bit. So that's something I can do to the pattern. I can rotate the grain. And if I were to have a vertical like divider wall, I would want the grain going a different way, and so therefore I would need to rotate it. So if you need to make those changes, you can. All right, that looks good to me. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label this in our layers panel. I'll label this shelf, and I will duplicate. So to duplicate, there's a couple places you can do this. You can go to the hamburger menu in the layers panel and click duplicate layer, and we can call it shelf 2, and then we'll pull that down. And if you hold shift, it will stay in alignment with the other shelf. You can also duplicate from the main top menu. So we'll go to layer, duplicate layer, and we'll call this shelf 3, and we'll just pull that down and make sure it gets right into place. You can use your arrow keys to make sure it's in alignment with the template. There's also a shortcut where you can hold Option and Shift and drag. Sometimes it's a little finicky though, so it's better to just kind of duplicate using the other options. So let's duplicate again. Shelf 4, holding Shift. We'll duplicate again. And I'm renaming as I go to make sure everything stays really organized. And then we can also right click on the layer and hit duplicate layer. There's always multiple places to do any action in these Adobe programs. Hold Shift. All right, and that looks like it's placed perfectly on the template. Okay, cool. So now that I have column 1 done, I'm going to select the image placement, and I'll hold Shift, and I'll select up to shelf 6. And now I'm going to group everything from column 1 into a group folder. So I'm going to click the folder down here, the folder icon that is in the layers panel, and I'm going to hit create new group, and it calls it group 1, and I will call this column 1. All right, so now we're going to do it again, but we're going to do this for the second column. I could go ahead and just duplicate a shelf from the first column, but since it's all grouped together so nice, I'll go ahead and just draw a new one. So go to the rectangle, click release, and you'll type in 615 by 30 pixels. And it's already got that fill selected and the very thin black stroke, so I can go ahead and place this here. Next we have a rod. It's a little more shallow than the shelf. So I'm going to go ahead, go back to my rectangle, click release, and I'll change the height here to 20 pixels. Now for the fill, we could find a metal, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually fill it with a gradient so that it can look metallic. So to find the gradient, we'll go to the gradients panel. Mine's in the top right. You can always find yours by going to Window Gradient if you don't see it. You can always search for different tools and windows in the search panel too if you're not sure where everything is. Okay, so this is my gradient panel in the top right, and I want to find like a metal gradient. There are some defaults. I'm going to go down here to the grays and see. So some of these look quite metallic. I might need to make some adjustments. So I see this gray 9, so let me make sure I have my correct layer selected so I can apply. So I click on to rectangle 2, and now I fill it with that gray. However, the gradient is gradiating left to right. I need it to gradiate from top to bottom so that it looks like a shiny piece of metal. So let's make some adjustments. I'm going to go up here to the control panel to adjust my gradient because I can see these options a little more clearly. So first I'm going to drag this lighter color up, and I'm just going to click to the left of it. That's adding a white color, but I just want to double click in here to add like another gray, like a medium gray. I want to add a dark gray to the other side of the light color so that when we rotate this gradient, it gives a cylinder look to the rod. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to drag this lighter color more towards the middle. And now I'm going to go where it says linear. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so that the gradient is going up and down instead of left to right. So I'll hit 90, and now I'm going to click off, and when I see this rod, it looks like a rod based on how the dark color is on the top and the bottom and the light color is in the center. It looks like a cylinder. So that looks more like a rod than it does like a shelf. So use the gradients to add depth to the rod so it looks like a cylinder. All right, so let me make sure I'm keeping up with my layers. So let's call shelf 1 again, and we'll go ahead and call this rod. So now I'm going to duplicate this rod. So let's go ahead and go to the rod in the layers panel. We're going to hit duplicate layer using the hamburger menu, and we'll call this rod 2, and holding shift, I'm going to drag it down and place it right where it needs to go. Okay, awesome. So those are just the 3 items for column 2. So let's go ahead and hold shift on these items, shelf 1, rod, and rod 2, select, and we're going to hit the group folder and call this column 2. Awesome. Okay, so we really just have one more column to do, and then we're just going to duplicate the other columns and place them over. Okay, so here we have our center column. So this is going to be a graphic. It's 615 pixels by 810. So let's go to our rectangle tool, click on the page, and release. All right, so here we're going to input these exact numbers, 615 for the width and 810 for the height, and we'll click OK. I'm going to give this a fill that is just a plain color since I'm going to place an image in here. All right, so I could draw this rod again. I'm going to go ahead and just find my rod from the column 2. So I'm going to collapse column 2. I'll get in here. I will duplicate this layer So let's call this, we'll just call this rod, and then I'm going to drag it out of that layer. And now I can uncollapse column 2, and I will just bring this rod over. I'm going to hold shift so that it stays in alignment with the other rod, and there we go. So that's it for column 3, our center column. I have my rod and I have the rectangle. So I'm going to select these 2 items in the layers panel, holding shift, and I'm going to click the folder icon to create a new group, and I will call this column 3. Okay, so now all I need to do is I need to duplicate columns 1 and 2 so that they can be placed in these areas on the template. All right, let's start with column 2. So I am going to duplicate this whole group, and this will be called column 4. So here's where things get not too tricky, just a little tricky. If you have the auto select turned on up here and it says layer, it's not going to let you select the correct thing. So let's just uncheck auto select so that we can move this group together. Okay, so auto select is turned off. This is important, otherwise you will be struggling and you'll be like, why aren't the things moving? Why won't it let me select what I want to select? Turn auto select off so that you can manually select what you want in the layers panel. All right, and I held shift and I just dragged that group right over and it's in place. Okay, so now I'm going to duplicate column 1. All right, let's duplicate this group, and this will be column 5. And I'm going to drag this to the top just to keep things in order. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click over here and hold shift. And snap it right in place. Use the guides that I have to kind of help you get it in place. Now I have the basic layout of my fixtures, okay? To hide your guides, you can hit Command colon or Control colon on the PC to hide your guides. Now I want to add my background wall texture, so I can go ahead and hide this background layer copy. So that's hidden, and now I'm going to place my background wall color. All right, so let's go to File, Place Embedded. I want to use the whole image instead of just like a little bit of it, so I want it to be the actual image, and it's pretty big, so I'm just gonna, I need to scale it up just a little bit so that it covers most of the height. Some of the height will be covered with the flooring. So I'm going to hit the checkbox, and it's just like a nice lightly textured wall. Okay, now I'm going to call this my back wall, and I want to make sure I drag this below column 1. Okay, so there it is behind all of our fixtures. All right, so now let's go ahead and place our flooring. We'll go to File, Place Embedded, and I have this flooring. I'm going to use the flooring, same flooring from my window display project. I'm just going to drag this down, and I just want to show a little bit. And I skew this image to make it look a little more dimensional, but I think it looks okay down here. So I'm going to hit the checkbox, and that's just a little bit of flooring. So we have our human for scale. Let's make sure that is above our wall. And honestly, we could delete our layer with our instructions. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Awesome. So make sure all your layers are labeled correctly. I need to label this floor layer. All right, so that is it for creating our planogram template. We have a back wall texture, we have our flooring, we have created a 5-column display following the template, and right now the placements for our graphics they're just basic rectangles. I will show you for the final how to place inside artwork and how to place in different images. So So please let me know if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to seeing your final projects after we get through this.